So today, Rafa Nadal winning in 3 sets over Marton Fucsovics. I watched sets 2 and 3, which was probably the moment when the wheels started to come off for Rafa. And I have to say that at the end of the second set, I actually made him maybe not even the favourite to go on and win the match, despite his reputation on that court, but just how I could see the match was panning out. But I missed the entire first set when people on Twitter were drooling over him. And I know, of course, there's also yesterday's action in the doubles. I think we should also touch on that because I mentioned to you how he was struggling on serve at times in sets 2 and 3. And yet yesterday, alongside Carlos, you said that you thought his serve was one of the outstanding elements of his game.
Yeah, yesterday I think I was drooling over his game in doubles, definitely. And over the first set, especially, it was Carlos who constantly was in trouble on serve. And they even started with Alcaraz serving first. They switched it up in the second set. They started the second with Rafa serving first because it was just going so much better. Like it's okay, sure, maybe he isn't getting the same serve speeds. I actually don't think they're bad at all. Like it's definitely not the serving that he came back with at the very beginning of the clay season. It's much better by now.
Sure.
But just in general, the lefty spin was just doing so much damage to Gonzalez Molteni, regardless if it's return, serve, baseline game, whatsoever, really. So yeah, I'm a little surprised that it was not doing the damage today. It was not supplying the damage against Fucsovic, as definitely in the doubles, it felt like a massive advantage for the Spanish team. And yeah, if Rafa was going to convince us today that the upset is possible, I'm not sure he did that.
The key moment in the match today, which I would say that probably the last couple of games, which was where he needed it most. Of course, his serve was sort of getting better again, but it was that beginning of the second set till the middle part of the third when it was very vulnerable. I mean, he was a breakdown. I think he was like 3-love, 4-1, 5-2 down in the second set. He then holds and then breaks to get it back to 5-4, but then is comfortably broken to lose the second set. But the crucial moment in the match was 1-2 love 40, and he did come up with some pretty good first serves in that particular spell. I think there was one or two unforced errors as well from Marton that he may look back on with some regret. But the other thing I wanted to highlight, which I said to you earlier, was also Rafa's return was, especially on the Marton first serve, as you said, Fucsovic is not exactly a serve bot. It's not somebody that we'd expect to cause Rafa problems, especially on Philippe Chatrier. But Rafa was just, the returns were, on the first serve in particular, were just way too short. And the inside-out forehand was quite effective at times for Fucsovic. And it just felt like as soon as Fucsovic got a first serve in, Rafa was never in the point thereafter, even if he sort of hung on a bit. But he did prevail anyway. And now, as you say, he's going to be playing Novak Djokovic tomorrow for the 60th time. 30-29 in Novak's favour. Does Rafa stand a chance?
2024 Djokovic is kind of a serve bot, so these return issues continue. Definitely don't think that Fucsovic is like, especially on clay, that he's an amazing server. Well, indoors, I've seen some phenomenal performances from him in that regard. With the late Jakub in Bratislava, for example, we watched this first set against Hanfman when he landed every first serve, and sure, that was unplayable. But yeah, that was perhaps also one of the biggest sort of downfalls of Rafa's performance today, even though he won, of course. And against Djokovic, it might be a thing. I don't know. I still have doubts regarding Novak, of course. I mean, he had a first round match that was not an actual tennis clash. Like, yeah, it just didn't make any sense, as a lot of matches during this Olympic tournament. Back in the day, it used to be like one or two. Now we've got like, 7 that basically weren't allowed to be matches. And that one against Matthew Ebden, probably the biggest example of that. So we still haven't really seen how Novak's knee is performing now after Wimbledon. We still haven't had him play like this fully satisfactory event, which I think for him would be either a title or like I don't know, like if at Wimbledon he loses in 5 sets to Carlos, that's probably more or less a satisfactory event. In that, we would know that he was really close to his best finally, and for the first time since the ATP finals. So I have some doubts regarding Novak for sure. but it still sounds like fiction a little bit, especially after today, to think that Rafa can win it. But well, the only problem is that if they're doing the unthinkable, usually they're doing the unthinkable against the other players, right? Not against one another. So maybe that sort of unthinkable is even tougher.
When you say unthinkable, you mean like 1 and 2, or what? You mean like an unthinkable scoreline?
I mean, like, when we don't expect one of the big three to keep going, to still be a factor, and then they are. But that's usually not against one another. Like, that's usually just how they come back to still dominate the rest of the tour. But so maybe this is the tougher version even.
The only thing, or not the only thing, but a thing that you could clutch at from Rafa's perspective, I had a lot of doubts about the likelihood of him winning in 2022. I thought that Rafa's form in that particular French Open, where he went 5 sets with Felix, was extremely shaky. Don't forget, of course, there was the whole foot thing, and there was the whole sort of Rome episode as well, isn't it, Shapovalov, and his form was shaky as well as his fitness, and I thought Novak was looking supreme. He beat Diego Schwartzman, I don't know what it was, like 3-1 and 3 or something. Now, I know Diego's kind of fallen off the cliff in 23 and 24, but he was still a force of some sorts in 2022, and I don't think he dropped a set, and he just looked imperious. And I thought night match that was going to be as well, that one in 2022, and I went into that with probably a similar level of optimism for a win that particular occasion to what I have for tomorrow. And so Rafa comes out the blocks fast, which he did that night, and he also did in 2021, despite going on to lose. Maybe if Rafa really takes it to Novak, if Rafa is super, super confident, can win that first set. I know there's ifs, buts, and maybes here. And Novak's form is mirroring particularly what it was pre-French Open, because I think there was a little bit of a turn of the corner there. Maybe Rafa can expose his movement. By the way, Rafa's movement today as well, sort of, it didn't look great in Bushstad, and now I've also got the memory of him, or seeing him with this thigh strapping on as well. Yeah, so there's lots of ifs, buts, and maybes, and probably we've already got a comment, by the way, about us being in bed. That it's taken a while, but we've got one. There are 2 single beds I want to hasten to add, Thriller, from Manila. But yes, Damian said, sorry, Jake is chuckling. I'm not sure about what exactly, but anyway, great to have you all on board, and make sure you hit the like button and all that other jazz. Do you want to react to anything I've just said? Am I being too optimistic for Rafa?
Well, I mean, the hamstring, I think, is what we were sort of told, right? That this is the injury that can sort of get him out of the singles even, but he's going to be fine in doubles. Doubles, there was no sign of it. Singles, maybe a little bit more. Obviously, it's a very different type of movement even. But yeah, I mean, the whole, the matches that you mentioned, that whole 2020, 2022 trilogy, like that was all so unpredictable between them. 2020, Djokovic is such a popular vote in terms of, okay, this is where he can beat Rafa and it's not a match. And then in 2021, you think, okay, so like, again, there's no way for him to really do it. So for some reason, this rivalry has always had these twists and turns, even though it's actually also been predictable sometimes. I mean, one of them, after all, is 20-8 against each other, against the other on hard courts, and the other is 20-9 on clay. The other way around, actually, 20-9 Djokovic on hard courts and 20-8 Rafa on clay, I think. Or, well, actually, no.
I think it's 28. I think it's 20.
It's even on grass. One is 29 and one is 28.
Yeah, true, yeah.
So it has to be Novak 20-8 on
hard
courts
and
Rafa 29 on clay. And there was that time where, like, for about a decade, Nadal hadn't won a set on hard courts against him.
It's still the case, yeah.
I guess it still lasts. They just haven't played in a while.
No.
So, like, while the streak continues, it's kind of less meaningful because with every passing year, they haven't played each other. But yeah, I mean, I guess on clay, the last few years, they've been much more up and down. Maybe. I really have no clue what to think about that as well. I will probably maybe try to catch it on my phone a little bit, at least. We'll be in Porto. But you guys probably know by now that it's not like, personally, it's not my match of the day. I actually don't know what my match of the day is yet, but it's probably not my match of the day personally.
Anyway, thank you for that comment there. Somebody suggesting that they think, in fact, his quality shot says that he said he should be paying for this type of content. Maybe this should be for members only. Yeah, maybe we should make that.
Only fans.
Jake, does it, the fact it's on clay, make it more compelling? Absolutely. I saw Gil Gross today. There's we needed some sort of circumstances to give Rafa a better chance. Indoor hard would probably be the least chance, but there are some equalizers or some things. Novak as well, being imperious form. Like if this was like October, November last year, form for him, and it was on indoor hard, that would be obviously insane. But clay, Philippe Chatrier, lunchtime, Novak's questionable form, Rafa playing.
What are the odds in that match, by the way?
Can you have a look?
Yeah, I didn't check that, but I mean, obviously Novak is the favorite. I'm just thinking which, to what sort of extent, right?
We are in Porto, and we are here for the Challenger this week, which main draw begins tomorrow. We've had some qualifiers today and some
it's pretty massive. 6-1 maybe for Nadal.
6-1.
Yeah, it's massive.
Wow.
It's kind of what Federer Djokovic had, I think, in 2020 in Australia when Roger was injured.
Yeah. And
of course, that was a best of 5 set match as well, which impacts it. But well, that's kind of even stronger, right?
Yeah.
In best of 3, they are giving like Nadal almost no chance to win. It's like similar to Tsitsipas Bergs, for example, today, just to kind of give.
Yeah.
So that
surprises
scary.
me. It's that.
Yeah, me too.
Heavy.
I actually thought it would have been closer. I thought it was going to be like 3.5 maybe.
Yeah, like 3.5 to 1. Yeah. I probably wouldn't make it that way. I put a load of polls out that have all been sort of 70-30. In fact, I think there's one on YouTube as we speak. But that's of course of people. Sometimes they vote how they would like it to pan out rather than 75-25. That's fair, I guess. 75-25.
Yeah.
With this poll on YouTube at the moment, so do get voting in that. But yeah, I don't see it as being that clear cut, but yeah, Djokovic. But actually, I don't think it being that clear cut because I don't know where we're at with Djokovic. If we were at somewhere good with Djokovic, then yeah, he takes it. But I don't. It's actually more about Djokovic that's giving me some optimism for Rafa than something about Rafa, other than maybe some of the bits we saw in the first set today, or perhaps that match alongside Alcaraz. What did you make of the doubles, by the way, alongside Alcaraz?
He was pretty amazing. I mean, Carlos definitely got into some rhythm as the match went on. Obviously, he was the one who hadn't played in 2 years. I mean, Rafa barely played doubles and barely played anything the past 2 years, but of course, he's got so much experience. Probably could have been one of the best players in the world if he ever tried doubles full time. And yeah, I just think that even though you could see that Gonzalez Molteni, well, they still held up of the ground and they still had that amazing doubles experience, sort of the point play. That was something that they had over the Spaniards, but especially Rafa, just the way that he could switch for the forehand down the line pass. They could never read it, like they could never really realize whether it was going in or not. And just in general, the lefty spin on everything from the serve through the return to like literally almost any baseline shot was just a nightmare for them to face. So I think Rafa did kind of carry that. Well, even if Carlos fired up later on with some great returns, I think it was actually his return that made them break in the second set, or rather secure that key break because there were 2 breaks. Definitely had some nice actions at the net as well at the very beginning. At the very end of the match, his reflexes are really good. But like, if there was the best player on the court out of these 4, clearly it was Nadal. That's not really a discussion.
Okay. Well, I think that's Nadal Djokovic tick done. There was a tweet from Jake actually that I would love you to repeat for me, Jake, about Rafa in the first set today, because I think you were very optimistic about Rafa's level in that first set, which did seem to carry on from where he was yesterday. But then, as I said earlier, sets 2 and 3 were very different. But he got over the line, and we'll play Novak Djokovic tomorrow, second up. on Philippe Chatrier, which I guess is also another reason for some optimism, given his record on that court. Okay, other